I wanted to share some experiences I had after scrying. Hi, I'm Heather. I share information on psychic experiences, spiritual awakening, twin flames, and crystals on my channel, so make sure to subscribe. Okay, so I wanted to share an experience that I had a while back after scrying. So if you're not aware what scrying is basically when you gaze into an object, and usually it can be, an obsidian looking glass type thing, or it can be a crystal ball, it can be, a black plate, it can be water, fire. You can probably use a whole bunch of different things to scry, but basically what you're doing is you're staring into that object and you're attempting to get information. So it could be, visual images usually is what you would expect, but I am not an expert. I kind of know about the concept, but a friend had mentioned trying to scry, and I thought, you know what, I have a crystal ball, so I think I'm going to try scrying too. So my brother actually gave me this as a gift a few Christmases back, but I never did anything with it. I honestly was just like, oh, it's cool. But I thought, you know what, you can use this to scry, so I'm gonna give it a try. So what you do is you just gaze into the object until you start seeing stuff. So some people may actually start seeing kind of like smoke come out, like a kind of haze. But eventually, you kind of like let your gaze just unfocus and, see what comes up. So I did that probably about 15 or 20 minutes, and I felt like I was kind of starting to see something. It kind of almost looked like a little face of a fox or something like that. Anyway, I really didn't think that much of it. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. Let me go look up fox, see what that means, see if there's some sort of message there. Anyway, so it was a little bit later, then I had this really wild psychic experience. And I mean, I've been spiritually awake for about 10 years since my Kundalini activation happened after meeting a twin flame. And so I've had my third eye open, and I've had a lot of experiences in the past, but I had never quite experienced anything like this before. So I have a lot of experiences in the hypnagogic state, and the hypnagogic state is where you are kind of in this in-between state where you're asleep, but you are aware of your surroundings. And for me, it ends up looking like it's kind of like a black and white scene. And so in this particular instance, I had gone to sleep and, woke up. And then what ends up happening is a lot of times if I go back to sleep, I'll end up in the hypnagogic state. So that's what happened. And so I was in my bed, and all of a sudden it's like I'm experiencing this like crazy, it seems like it's a dream, but you're very aware of what's happening. And so it feels like very kind of like physical almost. And so in this instance, I was in my bed and I was in my astral body, and I was being turned perpendicular in my bed, and all of the sheets were flying, and it was almost like this kind of metallic-y kind of like sound going on. And I could see up in the corner of my room, close to the ceiling, there was a figure that was wearing like a black cloak. So I could see like the arms, and I could see like, the covering, and I could see like partial, of its body, but I wasn't seeing an entire figure. It was just like up there. And, I'm in the hypnagogic state, so I'm aware, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what is happening? And I mean, it is a very like violent scene. Like, I have been in a hypnagogic state before where I am, being attacked. And this was probably one of the more violent ones as far as just, being, shifted around. And, I don't normally have those kind of, very aggressive attacks. So I have had experiences before in this state, and this one just seemed like way over the top compared to the other ones that I have had. But I basically was turned around perpendicular in my astral body, and this being was like, it was trying to pull me, and where it was trying to pull me, I don't know. But I just, all of a sudden you're in this state and you're trying to figure out, okay, I got to get out of this state. I've got to stop this from happening. And so one of the things that I've always been taught when you're dealing with entities in other realms is to basically say, I invoke the I am in me, and I rebuke you in the name of Jesus Christ, and I ask you to leave. So in this instance, I think I started to try to say that, but I think, a lot of times what ends up happening is you are kind of suppressed as far as being able to express what you want to say. And I don't know if it was that or just being flustered, but I just kind of in my mind, you're doing this telepathically. You're not actually physically saying it. You're thinking it, and you're kind of like trying to communicate that. But I basically just said in my mind, I said, you don't have control over me, and everything stopped. So after that happened, I wake up, and I'm actually, honestly, anytime something like this happens, I usually get mad at myself because I'm like, this should not be happening. You should be further along your journey. Yeah, things happen, but this was just like, okay, I'm like, this is not cool. I don't like this. So I was really upset about that. It's like, okay, I got the situation under control afterwards, but I was really mad that it actually happened in the first place. But then I had some other things that happened as well. So the next thing that happened after this was I was just waking up. So I was actually awake, and I heard something growling like right in my face. Now, normally with growling, I assume it's a negative entity, kind of, I would call them demonic. But because I was already awake, I was not, my dog's walking away, so sorry if you hear that noise. I was not scared. I was just like, okay, it felt like it was like right here. And I'm sure if I had been able to see it, I probably would have been very freaked out. But since I just heard it, because I do have clairaudient abilities, I was just kind of like, okay. Then the next thing that happened is it was like 5 in the morning, and my smoke detector just decides to start beeping out of nowhere. And I don't know if I'm sure everybody has had this experience where, it either has a low battery sound or it's going off. I mean, it is adrenaline causing. So I basically was just like, straight up 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, my adrenaline's going. I am not going to be going back to sleep. So after a while, I was like, okay, I don't know what's going on in my house, but obviously something has changed. And so I immediately start saying, okay, when you start experiencing different things, you kind of go through this exercise after a while of thinking, okay, where have I been? Did I bring something different home? Has somebody been into my house? These are a few of the questions you might want to ask yourself if you start experiencing a bunch of abnormal psychic things in your house or paranormal things. So I kind of ended up narrowing it down to the fact that I had used this ball to scry with. And so I was like, you know what? I honestly don't know what I'm doing, so let me see. So I looked it up, and it's basically, before you scry, you're supposed to put up some protection. Well, I did not know that, and so I end up learning by experience. So I would just say, if you're going to try scrying, you may want to do some research and, figure out what you're doing before you do it. But, I honestly did not think anything of it. I just was like, hey, let me go look. And I think probably the fact that I have more psychic abilities is probably because, that's probably what caused it to open up. Probably, a portal, an opening for spirits to come in. I honestly didn't think anything of it. I actually already have a portal in my house right now, and I have had to deal with different things that come through, so I'm kind of used to that. So, but for me, it was like kind of concentrated things that happened, and I was like, besides those 3 experiences, I also kind of felt like I was hearing things like move or whatever. And, you kind of just want to blow those off. It's like, okay, you know what? I don't know what that is. Hopefully it's my cat or my dog. I don't know. But the main thing I just want to communicate is, when these things happen, you don't need to be afraid. We do have more control over ourselves and these situations when this happens. So you can command, like I said, you don't have control over me. You can say, I invoke the I am in me, and I rebuke you in the name of Jesus Christ. I've been through this probably for 10 years, and so these things don't really faze me that much anymore. But I will say, you know, if you're going to scry, just do a little bit of research before you do it, and hopefully you won't have the same experiences I did.